Hello, welcome everyone. We'll get started in a couple of minutes. Get cozy. We're going to have a great community conversation today, so we are super excited, but get settled in and then we will start in about 4 more minutes.
I'm gonna go and change my Starbucks name now, Seely. I don't want to mislead our participants.
Right. That's smart.
You keep on coming and not coming, baby. Please stop rocking my boat. Cause I'm ready to rock. Honey, don't say it if you're lying. Cause I came here to water down your road. So, baby, why you shoot down on a good vibe, ready to flow? Oh, I'm on a good vibration. So whatever I am facing can't keep me down, can't keep me down, down, down. Cause if this is love that I'm feeling, then don't ever let this feeling go. Come on, let it grow, let it grow, let it grow. There ain't no need to start you crying. Why you come and shoot down on a good vibe, ready to flow? You keep on coming and not coming, baby. Please stop rocking my boat. Cause I'm ready to rock. Honey, don't say it if you're lying. Cause I came here to water down your road. So, baby, why you shoot down on a good vibe, ready to flow? Cause I'm ready to flow. Ready to flow. I'm ready to flow. Ready to flow. Lady, please take it easy. All I want is some good vibration. Please say it if you need me to relieve you from that negative situation. I won't stop at nothing just to show you the light. Please, I'm begging not to bring me down tonight. Girl, if you can only meet me halfway, you realize all the words you don't need to say. Why you come and shoot down on a good vibe, ready to flow? You keep on coming and not coming, baby. Please stop rocking my boat. Cause I'm ready to rock. Honey, don't say it if you're lying. Cause I came here to water down your road. So, baby, why you shoot down on a good vibe, ready to flow? Cause I'm ready to flow.
Leslie, did you want to do introductions or do you want me to go ahead and get started?
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize the music faded down. So sorry. Okay,
Okay.
yeah. We can get started right now. Is everybody ready? Okay. Susade, welcome to Inner Wellness. Inner Wellness is a 8-part series hosted by Green River College's Pono program to center mental health and wellness from a native Hawaiian Pacific Islander lens. You can join us every Thursday from 12 p.m. to 1:30 as we explore inner wellness. Special shout out to our sponsors and the people who have made this series possible: GRC Pono program, Elevate Healing, New Hope Counseling, and King County Pacific Islander Task Force. Also want to give thanks to Voice of South Pacific, a local island radio station focused on broadcasting in the latest in the Pacifica, who has graciously agreed to stream our series for folks to tune in. Akun. Finally, I want to thank our sister Anapisi Institution who are collaborating with us on this project. So shout out to North Seattle College and South Seattle as well. My apologies if I miss anybody as well. My name is Leslie Finn, she, her pronouns, and I'm the project coach for the Pono program here at Green River College. I have the honor of serving as a co-host today for today's session and passing it off to our other co-hosts to introduce themselves.
Awesome sauce. Thanks, Leslie. We so appreciate you. So, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome, everybody from Green River. We cannot thank you enough for being in this space with us. We are super, super excited. Sala and I call this season 3 of our classes because we have been running these classes since October 2022. And we are super excited that now that we can continue to expand these classes across the Washington state as well as the West Coast. So, with that being said, my name is Scarlett Ekaroma. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and boundaries coach. I've been in this field for over a decade and I absolutely love what I do. I currently work in my private practice, Elevate Healing. Not only do I get to do these amazing classes independently and with my colleague Sala, but I also get to see my amazing clients in my private practice as well. So today's class, community conversations is what we like to call it because we love community engagement. So if you are in the Zoom room, please engage with us. We will ask questions to get you all involved because that's what we want it to be. We want it to be a conversation that not you all just listening to us, just give information because we want to make sure that it is received well. So if you have any questions and you don't want to unmute, please put your questions in the chat. For those who are at the Green River Student Union, if you have any questions, please send it in to us. We will still answer them. So, because again, we want to make sure that we give out the correct information to our community. So, with that being said, I will be the co-host, and then my amazing colleague will be our full host on today. So, I will pass it on over to her. So, Salo, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Scarlett. Good afternoon, everyone. It's so good to be here and especially just being around Green River community. So just a little bit of background. I did start off my educational journey at Green River Community College. So this definitely feels like a sort of like a full circle moment for me. And I absolutely love the campus. I live like not even 5 minutes away from the campus. So it's such an honor to be in this space. But my name is Sala Afalava. I am a licensed mental health therapist here in Washington, and I also work out of my own private practice. At the same time, I'm also a student. So I am in my 4th year of my doctorate degree. So one more year to go and I'll be, done with that. But I definitely can relate to a lot of the a lot of the sentiments and the struggles of college students right now. So I am with you. Definitely can relate to that. But like Scarlett mentioned before, like we have been doing a lot of these community conversations because when Scarlett and I realized that we were like 2 of the very, very few Psalm 1 mental health therapists in the entire state of Washington, we got together and we started just kind of partnering with other local nonprofits, community organizations around here, just to be able to make mental health resources like giving these community conversation classes to open it up to our communities. Because a lot of the time, like our community people, like they would not be like sitting across from a mental health therapist unless they're like either mandated to go to therapy or because this avenue of help just isn't something that like our communities sort of are open to. So having these community conversations like this is Scarlett and I's passion. So when we say engage with us, ask your questions, and take advantage of the just of the fact that like you have 2 licensed mental health therapists that are Pacific Islanders that are in this in this space, in this room. And so that whole barrier is like removed, right? So feel free to ask your questions regarding our topic and our conversation, or what I'll be talking about today. But other than that, like I said, as you can tell, we're very passionate about this and we are looking forward to having some good conversation with you today. So I'm going to introduce our topic for a little bit. And then we'll go into sharing our PowerPoint presentation. Today's conversation is on what is psychotherapy. And one of the main reasons why we started with this topic, because we feel like this is such a foundational topic for our community. As I mentioned before, and research even shows that even though a lot of our community members are experiencing mental health issues, we are very, like, we don't even we underutilize mental health resources. So when we are coming to our communities, we want to make sure we come off with like, okay, let's start from the beginning. Let's have some kind of a foundational conversation leading into talking about other things, right? So before we can talk about depression or suicidal ideations, how about let's first talk with our community about what this new avenue of help is, which is, well, not new, but new to us sometimes. So let's just get to know what that is, and if there's any questions, let's address those questions. Okay, so that's why this afternoon's conversation is on what is psychotherapy. So give me a minute, I'm going to go ahead and share screen.
Awesome. So while Sala gets set up, if you have just a couple of housekeeping rules. So if you have any questions, please keep them relevant to tonight's community conversation. We have to say that because it has gone awry. I'll just leave it at that. And so, but again, please engage with us. We love having questions. And if you leave today's conversation, community conversations today, having a question that you thought about when you got home, please still send it in to us. We will for sure answer them. So Sala, you're good to go. You're muted.
All right. I said all right, then you say you're muted. I'm like, all right. Okay. So again, this is our conversation for this afternoon. What is psychotherapy? So let's start by kind of defining what psychotherapy is. And psychotherapy really involves like this interaction between a licensed therapist, like Scarlett and I, and a client. Like point blank, that's what it is. So whether it's an individual client, whether it's a couple, and we'll go more into that later on. But the focus is on improving one's mental health, right? So as a college student, you might be facing like stress from your schoolwork. Trust me, I know I'm currently a student, so I know the stress that comes with from your academics, right? It could also be from relationships, or just kind of like adjusting to your independence as a student, right? Some of us are maybe freshmen. This is your first time away from home, right? So therapy or psychotherapy is really designed to be able to address these issues and these concerns, and to also, in a way, help you to manage like your thoughts and your emotions and your behaviors, right? So a lot of the times when we have this community conversation, we always point out that there's a lot of stigmas in our community when it comes to even this word psychotherapy. I don't know about you and your experience, but when I grew up in Samoa, um, we would call other people that were not well mentally psycho. It's like, oh, it's psycho. Leang aleulu. We'd say these things. So there's like a huge stigma when it comes to this word, even psychotherapy. But truly, what we always want to convey to the community is this is the combination of psychological and therapeutic interventions or approaches, right? So these are two things that like are coming together, and now we have psychotherapy, because I think it's so important that if we know what this is, then it doesn't seem like it's such a big scary thing, even though it's like, oh, that's such a big scary word. It's like I see psychotherapy, psycho, there could be like some stigmas that's attached to it, but hopefully as we go through this conversation, the more, maybe a little bit more clarity would come up for you. But I'm just curious, maybe we can just start with a little bit of question, or if anybody wants to answer this, but like, has anyone ever thought about seeing a therapist just for managing school stress? Go ahead. I can't really see everybody. So Scarlett, I only see you raising your hand. You're like
No,
in school. Yes, raise your hand.
yes. No, I saw Natalie. I want Natalie and Celie to go first before I go.
Okay.
So go ahead, and Natalie.
So I remember when I was a student that, and this was when I was in my master's degree and I was working full time and I had children and a husband at home.
Mm,
And I remember thinking how, like, I'm trying to be superwoman and this isn't right. Something's wrong, right? You can't
mhm,
do everything. And so psychotherapy, I had a therapist and she said, well, what could you do to kind of pare things down? Because you're not
mhm.
crazy and you are trying to do a lot. And so it was really nice to have that interaction with somebody else to kind of a sounding board
Yeah.
to help me tear apart some of those um I want to say like constructs, right? If you're a
Mhm,
mom, you should be able to do it
mhm.
all. That's not true. Come on.
Mm,
Right. And
exactly.
so even though we do a lot, right?
Mhm,
And so I
mhm,
remember at that time, my husband had an opportunity to work the night shift. And I said, could you please take that for the next 2 years? Because
Mm,
I can't come home and make dinner and go to school and
wow,
entertain
yeah,
you
good
and
for
cook
you.
popcorn or whatever for what
yeah,
you're
yeah.
watching.
Good.
And he said, okay, 2 years. And I said, yes, 2 years is what I need from you so that that's the way you can support me. And that's what we did.
Mhm,
But
Love
that,
that.
that idea came about with a therapist. And so they're so wonderful.
yeah.
And
Love
as a
that.
counselor at the time for students, I had a lot of Peasy students, but they weren't called that at that time.
Mm,
And they were coming to play football. And I remember them being very homesick and them struggling with how to express that without looking weak,
mhm.
right? Because they're very, everybody in their life is sensitive, but when you feel weak, it feels vulnerable, right?
Mhm.
So that's my
Thank you, Natalie.
Thanks, Natalie. Go ahead, Seely. Floor is yours, sir.
Oh no, nothing to add. I was just raising my hand so your hand wouldn't be up there by yourself. That was it. But
Just
thanks,
giving a
Solid.
high five. High five.
Yeah, just
Virtual high five.
participating, participating.
Class
Thanks, Seely.
participation. I like it. I like it.
Love it. I think when I was in grad school, I thought about going to therapy. I didn't go because the big thing was I didn't see somebody who looked like me. So that was a challenge for me. So it was a lot of I would learn from class and I'm like, okay, how can I apply this to my life? But thankfully, as time went on, after I graduated, I was able to find a therapist for me,
Mm,
who would be able to help me navigate
mhm.
the healing journey, the mental health journey that I was on at that time.
Yeah. Thanks, Scarlett.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I honestly I think growing up in Samoa, like yeah, this wasn't even a thing. Like you just don't, but then like coming to the US and then going through the school system here, I honestly thought like going to see when they say going to see your counselor, I thought it's like the ones where like they're the ones that's changing your classes or something like that. Like I wouldn't think that it's for like you could go to like a different kind of counselor but for therapy. So that was sort of like my thoughts and understanding before regarding going to therapy about like academic issues or anything like that. Very, very limited. But all right. Thank you for your comments and feedbacks. Okay, let's keep it moving. All right. So here's another question. Just to kind of get more engagement. What comes to your mind when you hear the words therapy or mental health? And you can put your answers in a chat if you want to. Scarlett and Celia are going to read it out if that's more convenient for you.
Or you can unmute.
Mhm.
So I'll get the ball started so while everyone can sit and think about their answer. What I thought about with therapy and mental health, before being into this field, that the big thing for me it wasn't for people like me.
Yeah.
It was only
Mm-hmm.
for certain ethnicities, which is mostly Caucasian, because that was who was mainly in the field at that time. So
Mm-hmm.
it didn't make me feel like I belonged and that I could
Yeah.
actually go to somebody who looked like me or
Right.
who didn't look like me, because I didn't believe that they could truly understand
Mm-hmm.
me. So that's what I would say to that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Lena.
Yeah, just building off of that. I do think like mental health or therapy is such a like I think if I told somebody that I was in it and a family member would probably look at me like I was weird.
Right.
Like,
Yep.
you go
Mm-hmm.
to what? You
Yeah.
spend your money on what? You know?
Yeah.
Um, and I do like very much like resonate with like oh, go meet with your counselor. The only
Mm-hmm.
counselor I ever knew in my life was my college counselor who would tell
Mhm.
me which class to take so that I can get accepted
Yeah.
to this college, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
um but it's pretty awesome that like more and more even though I think they're probably hiding in the crowd, but there's probably more and more like Pacific Islanders who just know what mental health means. Maybe
Yeah.
before
Mhm.
we were so
For sure.
uneducated about it, but
Mm-hmm.
it seems like the doors are opening more and more for these for our communities.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Leslie.
I would say for myself, like just simply like yes, because to me, I really value my own mental health, and I hope that
Mm-hmm.
others do as well. I know that with my own family, it's not a super big concern, but I recognize for myself at a young age that I need to like focus on like and prioritize it.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Celie.
Yeah, I just wanted to read a comment on the Facebook chat page. Latu says unhealed pain, and then suppressed pain. Yeah, but
Mm-hmm.
I have a similar feeling to like
Mm-hmm.
what Scarlett said, right? It's a more dominant culture, right? Dominant culture gets this because they can afford, $250, $350 an hour. We don't see the value
Mhm.
in it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and even if you like um got therapy, right? It was like you kept it a secret, right? You ain't gonna tell
Mm-hmm.
nobody.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It was very taboo. But I'll stop there.
Yeah.
Before you go, Mara, so someone in the chat said, I always thought therapy was for people with serious mental health issues.
Mm.
Mm, that's pretty,
Yeah.
that's pretty deep. Go ahead, Mara. I hope I said it right.
I just like really appreciate being here. And as I'm like sitting here listening, I am Arab American, and everything that's been mentioned so far can definitely resonate with that, because in our communities too, there is this stigma of seeing a mental health counselor or seeking those services
Mm-hmm.
professionally.
Mhm.
It's more of the idea of, well, you have your family and you have your
Mm-hmm.
community, and
Right.
you use the family and the community really like as an outlet or as your therapy. I mean, no one like frames it like that, but
Mm-hmm.
you're
Yeah.
you're just supposed to talk it through with
Yeah.
family. And
Mhm.
um and I think I think we still have a lot of work to like
Mm-hmm.
kind of
Mhm.
change that perception, and to make it something that's acceptable, where you should seek out mental health professionals and get that support, and that
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't make you any less than, but it's almost kind
Absolutely.
of seen like as a failure, what not only on the behalf of the person but also the family, right? Because
Mhm.
our culture is so interconnected, and it's a
Mm-hmm.
collectivist culture. So
Mhm.
Yeah.
if you're struggling with something, that's not just on you. That means like the whole family has
Mhm. Mhm.
struggled and in some ways has failed. And so
Yeah.
I think that makes
Yeah.
it even harder as an individual to say, okay, I'm going to
Yes.
go and I'm going to like,
Mhm.
change this for myself. But thank you.
Absolutely. Oh, I can't come to our cultural stigmas class around mental health. We talk about all of that. Short
That's
plug.
next.
That's nuts. Go ahead, Dr. King. Nice to see you.
Oh my gosh, so nice to see you. I just want to let you know that you're being streamed on campus on the big screen, and all the students are
Awesome.
out there right now. So exciting.
Aw.
So that's where I just came from.
Awesome.
But this prompt I think is fantastic, because like my personal reaction to it, oddly enough, I feel like therapy is very stigmatized,
Mm-hmm.
but mental health to me feels like easier to digest. because I think someone, when I used to teach in high school, someone said mental health is something that we all have. So I think when you start from there, mental health to me is like more accessible, but therapy, even I have a little bit of like, you know, and I'm in therapy now, intense therapy. And it's just kind of interesting to me because like, I don't know if I could even talk about this without talking about my mother who inflicted, intergenerational trauma upon me. And one time I asked her, like, what do you think of when you hear the word trauma? And she went, what a joke. She was like, you call it, you all, like you youngins call it trauma. And she said, for all of us like elders, that it was called life. And it's that the normalization of trauma. And I have to say that even the word endurance has a very like double-edged sword meaning to me, because as people of color, we almost like kind of almost like there's like a weird, I don't know if it's like bragging or it's like a look how strong we are, we've endured, but it's like at what cost, you know? To do it alone, there's also my mother was like, yeah, look at me, look at everything I've overcome. And I'm just like, you know, Oma, like sometimes that's not necessarily a good thing. Currently trying to get her in therapy, but that might be a lost a lost battle, but I'm still fighting that one. So yeah.
Yeah, I love that you share that. So because we definitely talk about that more, because the way the older generation looks as honor is very different to how we look at it. So it's tell her to invite her to the classes. That would be great.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you everyone for sharing. Oh, it's like we're not even into like the agenda part of today, okay? But we are in it. But this is amazing conversation. Thank you everyone for just being part of the conversation today. But I have so much I want to share, but I'm going to keep it going, okay? So similar to everything that you just said, we're gonna play a short clip and just to kind of hear some of the responses, very similar, of some of these Pacific Islander individuals. Scarlett, please let me know if the audio comes through okay.
I think that you can talk about stress. Anxiety, you can talk about it, but mental, no.
They don't call that mental.
What
do they say? Crazy?
Crazy.
They label you.
So if you talk about it, then you'll be labeled.
You'll be labeled. There's a mental person in your family, and no one is supposed to.
When I say the word mental health, what is the first word that comes to your head?
Embarrassment.
Okay. Embarrassment.
To the family.
To the family. If someone has a mental health issue, what's the first word
I don't
you
like
think?
saying it, but
No, do
they're a retard.
Okay.
But I don't
No,
know,
we just have to be
handicap.
honest here. Handicap, retard, yes.
I have no idea.
That's fine.
Seclusion.
Okay.
Yeah, go with what he said.
Which one?
Retard.
Okay.
I don't know how to. It's really hard with the Pacific Islander community because we don't have words to describe what's depressing, what
The
bipolar
American.
is.
Okay.
What they're all crazy.
That's the thing. When we came from Tonga, we only learn about stress and depression here.
Here in America.
Yeah.
And when
The diabetes, if your sugar diabetes is low and you are safe, and in the island, they think you are crazy.
Yeah, there's so much to take away from that short clip, and as you can hear, a lot of it's similar to what we already were thinking what mental health is, right? I think one of the things that always stands out to me from that conversation is we don't have words. Sometimes we don't have words in our own native language to be able to convey or even explain. Like what's a Samoan word for bipolar? And even, coming up with a Samoan, like I'd have to explain a whole thing. So it's like we don't have our native language to be able to like even understand or explain or label what it is that we're feeling. And I think sometimes like that is what most of our elder generations experience. Is it's not that they didn't experience stress, or it's not that they never experienced depression. They experienced it, but I think it's just they never had the language to be able to communicate that, or even to like, well, how do you even help with that? And so like I know that bringing it back to our student community at Green River, like, so I know a lot of our students, just like with our community in general, mental health is such a growing concern. It truly is. Not only from like, as I mentioned before, like different pressures of life, academic stress, could be transitioning from home to school for the very first time. And so we really want to be able to say, hey, here's a resource, because we know as licensed therapists that therapy can be a space where you can talk to people, talk to licensed professionals about whatever it is that's you're having challenges or concerns with. Scarlett, did you want to add anything to that video?
Yeah, the only thing in addition to the language, is how, in regards to psychotherapy, people tend, in particularly the older generation, if you heard in the video, they talked about medical issues. And so they tend to mix those quite a bit. And so a lot of what, when Sal and I speak to our elders, we have to really help them define the difference between, okay, you go see a doctor for this and you see a therapist for this.
Right.
So it's a lot of information that they were not afforded, that we
Yeah.
are thankfully afforded, that we can now pass it on to them, because again, they just didn't know.
Yeah, and remember we had one of our elders that he was going to physical therapy. We know it as physical therapy. He was explaining it, and he thought that was therapy. He thought that was mental health. And then someone was talking to us, and what he was explaining was dementia, and they thought that was mental health. So we had to have the conversation of like, okay, this is the medical concern, and then this is what mental health is. And so it's really about just like helping our community, helping our students understand like what it is, and then being able to like let down that barrier of like, okay, this can be an avenue of help for us as well.
For sure.
Oh,
So
sorry, go
two
ahead.
comments in the chat. So we have belief shame. So the person is left to believe they are ugly and awful. And then someone said it is good to support mental health and time to connect with mental health professionals due to growing concerns.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Well, this is our kind of like Scarlett and I always like to kind of give a layout of the land, a quick agenda of what's to come. So we're going to go through like just defining like what psychotherapy is, the benefit that it offers, the different types of therapy that's available. We'll also cover like just how to find a therapist, because one of the things that we've discovered in our work so far as PI clinicians is that a lot of our community members are really not knowing how to find a therapist. And unless you have like maybe higher education or something, you like are familiar with it. But a lot of our community members, like, I don't know what's the first step. Where do I even go? So we'll talk a little bit more about that. We'll even share with you some of the questions that you can ask a therapist as you are sitting across from them. A lot of our community members know that like, or they think that like, it's like going to the doctor, where you show up for your appointment at the doctor, and the doctor's like, okay, you have this, take this medication, and then you're good to go. Right. But it's like, no, we want to actually empower you so that when you are sitting across from that licensed mental health therapist, you can ask questions to ensure that you are going to meet a therapist that you're able to connect very, very well with. And then like making sure that that therapist is going to address your needs of coming to therapy. Okay. And then, okay. Yeah. Scarlett, did you have anything to add to this? Okay. All right. And then, yeah, so questions to ask a therapist, what to look for in a therapist, and then understanding your rights as a client, because a lot of times, again, like we think that like, oh, this is just like, I don't have a say in anything. No, you have so much rights as a, consumer mental health, services. So we just want to make sure that you're aware of that as well. All right, so we want to define. There's so much out there, misinformation on TikTok or whatnot of what they think therapy is or how that goes. But as licensed mental health therapists, we really just want to make sure that everybody gets a clear understanding of what psychotherapy is. And as I mentioned before, with psychotherapy, a lot of times we hear just therapy. Or counseling. One of the questions we get a lot is that the same thing? Is therapy the same as counseling? Like, is it like, why is it like different? A lot of the times in our field, we use it interchangeably, so we could say therapy, we could say counseling, but truly it comes from psychotherapy. That's what the process is. And so psychotherapy, of course, is a method to be able to help people make positive changes in their behaviors, their personalities, or adjustments to life challenges. So for college students, this might mean, helping you deal with, like I mentioned before, homesickness. You could be away from home for, the very first time. This could help you deal with anxiety or the pressures of like, academic, how you're doing in an academic way. Your grades are not looking great. Maybe that professor is not willing to give you an extension and you're getting stressed out about it. Like, therapy can help with that. It can help you build relationships. It can help you to encourage communication. And it can help you to be able to foster like whatever, behavior, good behavior it is that you need in order to make like that change, right? So that's pretty much what psychotherapy is. One of the things we always point out too is like, if you look at this picture that's on the slide, you see like this couple that's coming into therapy and there's like this ball of yarn that's all like wrapped up together, right? And they come and they sit across from a therapist, and the therapist is just kind of sort of like, untangling, that wrapped up, knotted ball of yarn that the couple's coming in with. Therapy is kind of like that, right? So it is where whatever issues that you're going through, like maybe you're missing home, your everything that I talked about earlier, that's that ball of yarn that's all knotted up. You don't know how to balance, you're struggling, stressed out, how to balance school and work and demands of like, maybe one class or something like that. Like you're trying to balance all of that. You're stressed out to the point where now you're starting to feel depressed. Maybe now you're starting to have, some kind of thoughts. So this is where you get to, if you go to see a therapist is able to like, okay, how do I help you untangle sort of like all of those things that you're going through in your mind that you're not able to make sense of. And I think like Dr. King mentioned earlier, like, or somebody mentioned earlier about being a sounding board, right? Truly that's what it is, right? Because sometimes we can have so much going on in our minds that we don't quite know how to externalize like all of the mental chaos that's going on up here. We don't know how. And oftentimes, when you do sit across from a professional like a therapist, that person is skilled and trained in so many different interventions and techniques and ways to be able to help you talk about some of those things. And as you're talking about it, you will notice like a change in just how you are, or even how you are thinking about something, right? So it always helps in that way. Scarlett, did you want to add anything to this slide?
For sure. So for those who are in the Zoom room, so there is a summary of everything that we're talking about today, and so all of what Saul is talking about is in the summary. The big thing about when Solace is a trained professional and a licensed professional, we are licensed, and we always have to give out this information. We are actually licensed by the government, by the state board. We are not licensed by a random company. And in order for a therapist to keep their license, they have to do continuing education classes, and they have to do it, I believe, every 2 to 3 years. The other part is when you'll see in the summary, there are different types of licenses. So, for example, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. Sala is a licensed mental health counselor, soon to be a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
So, we just wanted to give you all that information so that you all are empowered to know what it is. And so, we break down each abbreviation of the licenses in the summary. So, there's like LPC, LMHC, LCSW, LICSW. So
Mm-hmm.
there's all of that is in there.
Mm-hmm. Any questions or comments? we really want to make sure that we are like, defining like what this whole process is for you. If not, I will move forward.
So curious question, Solid. So if they're not licensed and they say they're a counselor, what would you say to a person if they said should I see them?
That would be very unethical. They can't see anyone on a, professional level, like unless they're like a school counselor, academic counselor, and they can see people or see students on, finding their classes or something like that. But as if you find someone and they say that they are a counselor but they're not licensed, they don't have any credentials, then they actually can't do that. That'd be illegal. Okay. So yes, Scarlett's going to talk about it later too, about like all of the different, the different credentials that we would need in order to be where we at and be able to sit across from you.
Yeah, I'll mention it real quickly. So everybody who is a licensed therapist has a master's degree or up.
Mm-hmm.
And so in order to become a fully licensed individual, you have to have 3,000 postgraduate hours. So that's about a 2.5 year, it's a journey. So, but it is a journey well worth it. And so, because not only do you have to do internship and practicum hours while you're in grad school, but you also have to do what the state requires. And then additionally, the state does require different classes as well for licensure. And so those are all the things that in order to become, and then you have to pass the national test. And so for each type of therapist or each license has a different test. And so those are all the things. So when somebody becomes licensed, they have went and continue to go through the journey of keep not only just getting the license, but also maintaining the license as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. All right, benefits of going to therapy. So I know we already shared a little bit about this, or someone earlier had shared their experiences of going to therapy. And if you're more than welcome to share that again if you want. But this what I have on the slide is by no means like an exhaustive list of benefits of going to therapy. But for students, some of the benefits of going to therapy, like I've already mentioned like a little bit before, this can mean like helping you be able to manage those academic stress. It can help you be able to improve like your decision making. It can help even help you navigate those social pressures. Maybe there's social pressures on campus. It can help you manage symptoms of anxiety, depression, that I know a lot of our students are experiencing, because like going to school and trying to balance life and work and family and everything else, it is stressful. It is stressful. So going to therapy can be very beneficial in the sense that like it can help you, teach you techniques and coping skills, to help you manage all of those things as well. Scarlett, did you have anything to add, or does anybody else want to have any questions or want to share their experience?
Yeah, I can definitely share my experience about therapy. Thank God for therapy. Let's just put it out there like that. And so I actually enjoy being able to take whatever is going on with me and leaving it with a therapist who will help me navigate through whatever
Mm-hmm.
wires I have crossing. So
the knotted
the
knotted
knotted. Exactly. So I actually enjoy it. And so I can't remember who said it earlier, but like,
Mm-hmm.
my family knows, I literally include, I was like, oh yeah, I talked to my therapist the other day and they're like, wait, what? I said, yeah, keep going. Just keep moving on. And so
Yeah.
I actually enjoy it because I learn how to not be ashamed that we all
Mm-hmm.
have challenges. I learned to be like, it's okay. And I love my therapist and I enjoy just going and all the benefits that you have listed there.
Yeah.
It absolutely is worth it for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like I said before, this is by no means like an exhaustive list of like, benefits of going to therapy. But I think like I said, like for our students at Green River, if ever you're going through a difficult time and you probably are feeling like you're only going through this alone, like you're like the only one that's going through this. Sometimes like even coming to this community conversation, I imagine you'll feel like, okay, not just me that's experiencing this, so but also going to therapy, like being on that one-on-one level with the therapist, with the licensed professional that's really giving you the space to be able to, like, a judgment-free space, let me say that, a judgment-free space, where you can just say whatever you want to say, share whatever it is that's on your mind, and then this person is able to kind of help you navigate through maybe some of the confusion that you might be experiencing, anxiety you might be experiencing, and managing stress. Oh, Celie, did you have something?
Yeah, no, I wanted to build off of like Scarlett's like perspective about getting a therapist, right? So I work for King County Public Health. This is like the fifth one of these that we have like hosted. But as a male, it's been tough. Like I still haven't gotten a therapist, but I've got so much information. I've got so much ammo to really help me, like, answer some of these questions. So I really appreciate how you guys break it down. But just for, some of the students out there, it's tough, man. I'm like 43. I still haven't gotten a therapist. I'm thinking about it. It's a good idea. We keep like moving the needle. But I appreciate you guys for having these conversations.
Absolutely, yeah. So we will continue to push you towards the needle even more. Don't worry. So, Sylvia, I believe Auntie Sylvia had a question. If you're speaking, we can't hear you.
So much, Salah and Scarlett, for this great information. Very, very important and relevant. I see a lot of people making comments, in the Tongan language. And thank you so much, Titi Taufa. Thank you, Lata Hefa, for welcoming everybody. Um, and I see Lupe Hikuleo Otonga. She was asking like about the depression, and um, well, about the when is the next one, and so if you could just maybe put up, like the time and the date and the address, because they feel like they have the,
Sure.
it's very much needed, for them to attend the next event in
Yeah,
person.
so for sure. So the individual who asked about depression and anxiety, we actually have a depression and anxiety class. Auntie Sylvia, we will send you the flyer so that you can send it out to put it on Voice of the South Pacific so that you can see what the times and dates are for each class.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Go ahead, Dr. King. Floor is yours.
I appreciate you. We have some new folks coming into this meeting. So in case you did talk about this earlier in your session, could you possibly reiterate or explain why it would be especially important or feel more accessible for communities of color to see counselors or therapists? And I know you were distinguishing between those two, but they're particularly therapists of color, and like historically why it's like a barrier to even indulge in talk therapy.
For
So
sure.
kind of going into that.
Yeah. One, if you are a student of color and want to be a therapist, please come. We need more of you. Okay.
Seriously, yes.
We need you all. So I think just in general to kind of summarize, Dr. King, what the question is, part of the reason we wanted to talk about why the importance of mental health therapy is because we wanted to have these classes because there was a lot of misinformation that was out there, and we wanted to help really define what therapy is because if you're not seeing somebody who's actually in the field, you get your information from somewhere else, and then you kind of make up, you're like, okay, well, that's not me, I don't need that. So that's why today's conversation about what is therapy, so we can actually
Mhm.
tell you, well, in particularly psychotherapy, what actually it is versus what it is not. So that's what I would
Mhm.
say to
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sal.
I'd also add to like the importance of people of color to be able to find a therapist of color. One, I will say research does show that therapist matching is, I think, what they termed it, for people of color specifically, is really helpful. And it people of color tend to stay in therapy longer if they are matched with a therapist of the same ethnicity, or another therapist of color. So that's, I mean, that's what the research shares about that. And at the same time, representation really matters. It really matters. I can't tell you how many times Scarlett and I have received intakes from clients that are being referred to us because they're looking for specifically Pacific Islander therapist. And then they're surprised because they're like, I didn't know that we have a Pacific Islander therapist, So when they do find us, they're like, oh my God, they're really excited because representation really matters. Because there's a difference between going to, let's say, for example, like, a Caucasian therapist, and then they have no idea what a Samoan, person is. And so, they're gonna say, oh, well, tell me a little bit about yourself. And so now I'm gonna spend probably 30 minutes of my session trying to explain to this therapist my cultural background and where my community is from, versus like, or some of my cultural, some of my own cultural and traditions. And the difference between that is like, if I was to, like, for example, see another Samoan or another Pacific Islander, we're very similar in our cultures and our communities. So when a Samoan person comes in, I already know what they're talking about when they're talking about stress of a fala vilave, or that's a family obligation, and having to give money to our family because of something, or the lack of boundaries, like I already get it. I'm like, I get it, So there's a huge difference as to why, finding like another therapist that is not of the same ethnicity, and finding a therapist that is of the same ethnicity as you, another therapist of color. So hope that helps, Dr. King. All right, great conversation. I love this. And look, we are only at slide 5. Oh my goodness, we might need extra time. Okay, all right. Building trust in therapy. Okay, so when you are in therapy, trust is a key component of therapy, right? And just think about it, like, you wouldn't open up your whole life story to a stranger that you just met, Well, maybe some of us would, but you wouldn't just, like, open up all of the deepest wounds or all of the deep traumas that you have to just anybody, right? So trust is important. And even more so in therapy, and every therapist is really trained on this, on the importance of building trust with our clients in therapy. So for college students, I think it's really important to find a therapist that you feel safe with, that you feel is a supportive person that you can talk to. Because like I said, and what we've continued to say throughout this conversation, therapy really creates that space where you can, release your emotion, where you can have that cathartic moment with an individual that's able to hold that space for you, right? And you're able to gain a new perspective. You're able to, like, maybe put into practice a different way of thinking about things. So building trust in therapy, and we call it a therapeutic alliance. That's what this is. This is where, so if you ever go into therapy and, the therapist, it feels like a therapist is making small talk, that is them trying to get to know you, right? They're trying to, like, find something similar to connect to you on, to relate to you on, because they want to be able to build that trust in therapy. So if you go to therapy and you're like, oh my gosh, all this therapist did was just talk to me about, like, or ask me about my day and this and that, it's like, give it a little bit of time, because the therapist is probably trying to build rapport with you. That therapist is trying to build a connection with you. So give it a little bit of time, and see if, like, there is going to be a connection there with this therapist. Okay. Any questions, or Scarlett, do you have anything you want to add to this?
Seely, you don't need any more time. Okay, I'm gonna put that out there. get to it. But yeah, I just to reemphasize, it is truly important to and Sal's going to go over this to make sure that you ask your questions so that you can start building trust in the therapeutic alliance. So I think that's really, really important.
Mhm. Thank you. Oh, do we have a
Go
question?
ahead, Natalie.
Natalie, go, Natalie.
So I can remember meeting with a therapist, and you're right, it does take a little time for them to kind of for there to be a flow of information. And I remember a breakthrough. I remember saying,
Mm.
one of the reasons I came was because I've had these like heart palpitations, and I'm not really sure what it's about, and it'll just happen randomly. And the therapist said, this sounds like anxiety and maybe a panic attack. And it was interesting because I'd heard these words a lot. And I had remember saying to the therapist, I thought panic was like a specific event. Like
Yeah.
there's a fire, we're in panic, don't panic, walk out nicely.
Yeah.
But it had to be attached to something specific. And they said, well, that makes sense. And yes, that can be true, but a panic attack can be about something that you're not necessarily aware of.
Mhm.
And so anxiety, right? We don't always know where it's coming from. There's good anxiety, right? We
Yeah.
care about what we're learning. We care about what we're answering on a test. So there's a little bit of natural anxiety involved in those kinds of things, right?
Mhm.
We're attending a wedding. We care about it going well, but we're still anxious. Those kinds of things. And so hearing like the natural anxiety that people have over just simple things, and then understanding the anxiety of a panic attack. And so I remember that breakthrough being so meaningful because I didn't realize that you could be panicked about something that you don't necessarily are able to identify. And so
Mm.
I just wanted to share because that's what it looks like in
For
therapy
Yeah.
sure.
to have that breakthrough. It's very beautiful.
For sure. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
sharing that.
Mhm.
Auntie Sylvia, you have a question? What is
Yeah.
your
Oh, I
question?
just wanted to just to share. We all know, especially about our culture. Like everybody knows each other because we exist as a communal. And
Mhm.
everybody knows each other's business. Everybody knows, like I'm family with everybody in the whole community. Just like it was funny though, like when Yam Tongi, was becoming an American Idol, winner, everybody, one of the, they did a fireside, and I remember that one lady asked, how many new families do you have? Everybody's all claimed, that's my uncle, that's my auntie, and I'm all related, to. Anyway, that's happening, because when we say mental health, it's almost like a very, very sensitive, topic. But otherwise, we all have that, like in our whole life, there's always something, to glitch. But I liked, also like from the first Tongan senior community, they said, like, is it wise, I feel like talking to a spiritual, like minister, or pastors, they could have like a great, advice. But also, I love that Latuhuaka was saying, she was also like one of the counselor, when she was a school teacher.
Mm.
And her, she put it in a Tongan language, but she said, it's very important, like when you pick, a professional therapist, because the information and what you shared, you feel free to open up and share it, with those professionalism, because your everything stays there.
Yeah.
It's just almost like the saying, like what happened at home just stays at home, yeah. But otherwise, everything that, it's very, very helpful, for all of us, that are listening and tuning in. And I ask the listeners, please keep sharing it, because everybody, this is a great topic and it's very helpful for everybody.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Aunt Sylvia. All right. I love the engagement. I love it. All right. We'll move forward. We got like lots to cover still. Um, So types of therapy, again, like we realize that, when we are putting this conversation class together, we really want to make sure that we are breaking it down just to give a foundational understanding of therapy, of what it is for our community, and easy for us to understand. So there are different forms of therapy. There's individual therapy, there's group therapy, which consists of like 2 or more people and the therapist. There's also family therapy, which is, it could be the entire family, like the parents or the guardian with all of their kids, or with the one kid that maybe they feel needs therapy. That would be family therapy. And then there's couples therapy. So that would be the couple and the therapist. So these are all different types of therapy. So for college students, individual therapy can help you, like what I've mentioned before, can help you address some of those, like, personal challenges, while group therapy can be a way for you to be able to connect with other students who might be going through maybe similar experiences, like adjusting to like college life, right? So for example, if Scarlett and I were to do a group therapy class, not class, group therapy for Green River, it would look like, we're like, this is for, we would probably call it something along the lines of like, transition or something like that. I don't know, whatever it is we'd want to call the group. It wouldn't be like mental health for, no, we would like change it to where it'd be, this is a type of group where if you are experiencing like difficulty, like transitioning from like living at home to college life and trying to balance, guarantee you there's other students that are also experiencing the same thing. So having this type of group therapy with a professional therapist that's able to facilitate conversation can be really helpful, can be very validating for you, knowing that like, oh, okay, I'm not the only one that's going through this. And then that therapist is also able to kind of like give some ideas of how you're able to kind of manage and navigate that as well. Any questions? Or Scar, did you want to add anything to this?
You heard that, Dr. King? We're running a group. Just joking. Just joking. So in addition to what Salas said, there are, each therapist is trained in something like that has this is a specific training. So for example, they could be trained in like Salas trained in OCD, and so which is obsessive compulsive disorder. There are those who are trained in parenting, those who are trained in depression and anxiety. And so you want to look for actually what you're desiring out of the therapy space. It's the same thing with group as well. So there are therapists. So even though I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, is I mainly see individuals and I don't really see couples, and I also see families as well. So V Tina, I see that you have a question. Go ahead. Or your hand is raised, sorry.
Yes, I don't have a question, but Sala was talking about the different types of therapy, and well, we all are, right? You all are, and so
Yeah.
I feel like this is a form of group therapy for me.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because a lot of what folks have intimated in our group, I can really relate to. So yeah, this is a form of group therapy for me. Although I have had individual therapy also. I do have a therapist.
Love that. Thanks for
Thank you.
sharing that. Thank you. Yeah. So again, whatever you're looking for. So if you're looking for a therapist who works, who does well with like intimate partner relationships, or there are therapists who just work with teens, therapists who just work with adults, therapists who just work with young kids. So those are the things that you can look for when you're
Yeah,
seeking out
that's good.
a therapist.
Yeah, that's good. So it's a lot more focused. So what Scarlett is saying, like for example, like this conversation here today can be therapeutic for some, right? But when you go to a specific therapy group, like the specific focus could just be on one thing, which is depression, it could be anxiety, it could be OCD, like Scarlett had mentioned. And it'll definitely be a lot different in how that therapist is going to help in that specific group. All right. We're going to keep it moving. Ooh, psychotherapy meets culture. So this is the slide where I usually, because like I said before, like uh therapy is sort of this foreign concept. So whenever I am sharing with my community, my Samoan community, I try to find some aspects of my own community, my own culture, to where I can say help my community understand therapy like from that lens, right? So I know that like a lot of our students are from diverse backgrounds, so it's really important, as I mentioned before, to find a therapist that really respects and understands your cultural values. Like, it's so important. Not only research says it's important and beneficial, but it's also really good for you to be able to find a therapist that is able to like really respect and understand your cultural values. So psychotherapy can incorporate like cultural perspectives in your therapy. I know a lot of people be like, well, how do you do that? It'll be difficult to do if you're not a therapist of color, if you're not like seeing a therapist that has the same ethnicity with you and things like that. It'd be maybe difficult to do, which is why I think it's important to be able to like navigate those cultural and personal identities that you're going through in like a college environment with like a therapist of color that you feel you can connect with and be able to relate with. But whenever I do share therapy or the concept or the idea of therapy with my Samoan community, I liken it to what is called to this relational space that it's called Va'afealoaloa'i in Samoan. So in Samoan, it's Va'afealoaloa'i, which is a relational space. And in the Samoan culture, this Va'afealoaloa'i is such a sacred space between two individual. There could be a Va'afealoaloa'i between me and my sister, me and my brother, me and my teacher, me and my parents. It's like a sacred, very, very important, sort of like space that's there. So whenever I'm trying to talk to a Samoan person about what therapy really is, I pull from that cultural concept of that Samoan cultural concept just to be able to help them understand a little bit more. And so I shared this slide with the idea of like, as I'm sharing and trying to relate this concept of therapy to my own community, if you are a person of color, I wonder if you're able to think about um, aspects from your own culture that you feel like you can relate to your community to be able to talk to them about what therapy is and how it can be an avenue of help for your own community. Scarlett, did you want to add anything to this?
No, I always think it's important, especially going into the therapy space, that that you find somebody who is culturally sensitive, who will honor all parts of you, and which is our culture, ethnicity, and race as well. And so, just want to encourage you to that it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to ask, want what you want in the therapy space. The only thing I would add to that is if in addition is it's not your duty to explain your race or ethnicity to a therapist. They have to do their due diligence to look up and research your ethnicity and race and culture, or whatever that may be, because the space is for you so you can release, not so for you can go and teach. Now, if they ask you a question and you feel like you want to share the answer, please do so. But I just want to encourage you that to find somebody who honor all parts of you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Go
And
ahead,
then
Dr.
also,
King. Oh, sorry.
I'll just say a comment before you go, Dr. King. Before it slips my mind, because yes. But I just want to also add that, like, okay, now it's slipping. It slipped my mind. It's gone. I'm like, it'll come back. Go for it. It'll come back.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I hate when that happens. Scarlett, what you said, I just want to underscore. So full disclosure, I'm not Islander. I identify as Korean American. But I will tell you, I had a therapist who identified as white, and she, if I wasn't already educated in my journey and like was very familiar in my roots and my culture and heritage, I wouldn't have picked up on this, but she was telling me how my mother, she'd never said I love you growing up. This should sound maybe resonate with a few of your communities. It was acts of service in the way that she showed up, right? And the therapist was like, oh, I'm starting to think your mother was actually narcissistic because she was using like a white cultural lens instead of understanding where our communities come from. And she was really trying to identify like this idea where a mother is not really individual from her child. It's more of that like collective identity. And so, you know, with that frame, it's like we're not really separate or individual. So she was like mislabeling it as narcissism. And so like it honestly makes me fearful for our youth who choose to tap into therapy and don't get aligned with a culturally competent therapist to where they're being conditioned and told that their family members just like misinterpreting a lot of things without that cultural context. So I just wanted to say that, Scarlett, what you said with me, like resonate. I've literally seen it live with my own therapist. And it's just something that we need to be aware of and why we need more of that representation that you're saying.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing that, Dr. King.
All right. It came back. It came back. It's back now. Yes, I was going to add that as we're talking about like therapists of color, doesn't necessarily have to like it doesn't necessarily have to mean like you're just specifically looking for a Samoan therapist. It can also mean you're looking for a therapist that is like maybe aligning with your values, maybe aligning with your beliefs. Because like you can, and we'll share this later on, but you can go to these resources that we will share later, and you're able to filter through exactly what you are looking for. Like, I want this therapist that is maybe like is a Christian therapist, or maybe it's like a Muslim therapist, or maybe that like this therapist that focuses mainly on this. Like, you are able to filter that and be able to find a therapist that you can, you know, definitely connect with, if not like on that ethnic part, but maybe even on those values that's important to you. All right. Any other questions or comments? We will keep it moving. I love this
I
discussion.
have a comment.
Oh, yes, go for it.
I just was about to write to Dr. King to say right on point. Honestly, this is amazing, but thank you. I will be sending you a message. I want to connect with you because this is what is happening to our children, to our nieces, to our nephews when they come to these countries that are different from theirs. We are all, as mothers, as aunts, as grandparents, being labeled as narcissists. And our children don't know any better but to believe that. So thank you so much. We need to talk.
I love that. Thank you. So all right, like we said from the beginning of this, when you leave this conversation, our goal is you leave empowered to be able to tap into therapy, or to be able to at least say, I know how to find a therapist. I know what to ask a therapist. I know, you know, where to look for. I know how to filter down where. Like, we want you to leave empowered after this conversation. So how do you find a mental health therapist? These are just some of the ways. These are really the common ways that the people that we've worked with have shared with us. So, and we put like, you know, connect with your healthcare provider for a referral, mainly because a lot of our community of colors, like, they will go to the medical doctor for everything. They will go to a medical doctor for it could be like, you know, somebody was mentioning earlier what they were experiencing, right? Like their physical symptoms that they were experiencing. So you could go to a doctor and they're like, you know, I'm like, you know, my hands are always sweaty and my heart is always racing. I don't know what's going on. a lot of the times our communities of color, we experience and we express a lot of somatic symptoms when it comes to, mental health stuff. So we are more likely to express or verbalize somatic symptoms versus emotions and feelings. Okay, so that means like we don't really say like, oh, I just feel, so tired, or I feel sad, or I feel depressed. We're more likely to say things like, gosh, my stomach has been hurting for like last week. And then like my heart was just like racing, like I don't know what's going on. Like, so we're more likely to report somatic symptoms than we are to talk about emotions, or to, report that we feel some type of way about things. Okay. So that's why we say, if you do go to your medical doctor, your physician at the hospital, and you are saying all these things, that you can ask them for a referral. Or more than like, I think what I see happening now is they will give you like a short survey, and that's usually their depression anxiety short survey that they give. And then depending how you answer that, or your results on that, it will let them know like, okay, this person is showing moderate to severe signs of depression, so I need to give them a referral to a therapist. So you can also get a referral to a therapist through your medical provider that way. You can also utilize your insurance, which is something that a lot of people commonly use, is their insurance company. So how this works is you can call your insurance company and ask them like, hey, I need mental health services. And then what they'll do is they will give you, or you can go on their website too, they'll give you a list of all of the therapists. If you give them your address, your zip code, they will give you a list of all the therapists that are living maybe 10 miles from you or something, and that accepts your insurance. That is another very common way that people have gotten to find a mental health therapist. I think one of the disadvantages of going through insurance is, well, other than like, not really caring for the therapist, but I'm not going to go into that one. But I think another disadvantage of like going through your insurance is sometimes they'll just give you anyone, right? And you don't get to, they're very limited. So they're like, these are the only 3 therapists that accepts your insurance. So, and then you're left with feeling like, so I just have to call these 3 because this is what my insurance, can do, right? So I think that's a kind of like a disadvantage for that. But at the same time, I would say still continue to find a therapist that even one that's in network, that's an in-network provider for you. We also say like, if you're comfortable, ask if you have friends that like have been to therapy before. You can always ask them like, if they had a good experience, ask them like, hey, do you know if your therapist is accepting clients, or do you know if your therapist can give like another referral or another recommendation to another therapist that's accepting clients. But sometimes like we find, especially that like, the report of our friends and our family, are trusted, note that, trusted friend and family member, usually like their rapport is like, okay, yeah, this is a good therapist, you should check them out. So that's another way you can find a mental health therapist. Another common way that people have gotten to see us is utilizing their employment assistance benefits or plan. So a lot of depending on where you work at, they offer these what they call EAPs, and they pretty much, I think, they fund or they pay for your therapy sessions. And so if you use that program, they will also have a list of therapists that they are in network with, that they have contracted with, that you can select from to be able to like, start your therapy with them. Then we also have like, so these websites, our main one is multiculturalcounselors.org. Multiculturalcounselors.org. So, and Psychology Today. Psychology Today is like a directory for therapists all across the US. I think even outside of the US. You can go in there, you can filter down like the area code where you live in, the kind of therapist that accepts your insurance, and all of this list of therapists with their website, with their contact information will come up. Multiculturalcounselors.org is a nonprofit organization based here in Washington, and it's a directory, but just for therapists of color. That is amazing. So you can go on this website. You can, whatever your ethnicity is, like if you click on Samoan ethnicity, you will see like me and Scarlett on there. So you can go there and you can filter it down by ethnicity, by the therapist ethnicity. You can filter it down by religion. You can filter it down by language. And this is only therapists of colors that are on this website, and it's a directory. Okay, so that is one of our top go-to resources that we always offer clients to be able to like look. So then you'll go there, every therapist will have their own individual like website or web page with their fees and all the information that you will need to be able to give them that call and make that appointment. Scarlett, did I miss anything?
No, so just wanted to add some information. So just real quickly, so for EAP, that is short-term therapy. So if you're wanting just to try therapy, that is a good avenue to utilize in regards to insurance. And so if you're not liking the in-network therapist that you have, you want to ask, what are your out-of-network benefits? And so you want to ask like also what it is and what is the reimbursement rate. So they'll either reimburse the full amount because you're repaying out of pocket to the therapist that you chose. They'll either reimburse you for the full amount, some of it, or none of it. So you want to ask what your out of network therapy benefits are, because that's how my clientele sees me. So I'm considered an out of network therapist, and they get, and I send what I need to send so that they can get reimbursed. So those are the only two things I wanted to add.
Okay, thank you. All right. Questions to ask a therapist. So when you're looking for a therapist, it's so important to ask questions like, how long have you been practicing? What experiences do you have with issues like anxiety, severe anxiety, like what I'm experiencing right now, or stress, or which those things are really common in college students. And when you ask questions, like again, this is not a list, like not an exhaustive list of questions that you can ask. But Scarlett and I, in terms of like, we want to empower you. We want to let you know, like, hey, you can ask questions when you're sitting across from a therapist, right? So these are just an example, because sometimes like our communities are kind of like, well, I don't really know what to ask. Like here's an example, here's a template of what you can ask. Like if you're going through depression and you're calling that therapist to make an appointment, ask them like, hey, how can you help me with severe depression? This is what I've been experiencing, the last couple of days. This is what's been going on. I want to know, how can you help me with this? Right. And then they'll give you an answer. And if they're stumbling around, they're not quite sure yet, they're trying to find their words. I'm like, I'm not too confident that this person can help me. Right. And then you're on to the next one. So please ask your therapist questions. Okay. Any questions? Or Scarlett, did you want to add anything to this one?
So the big thing is, you are interviewing the therapist to see if they are a fit for you.
Yes.
That's the point of that.
Point
That's the
blank. Yes.
Point blank. That's the empowerment. And if they are not a fit for you, you do not have to stay with them. Even if you're given the therapists who are on the list of the in-network, it doesn't matter. You have the power to choose who you want to choose. Don't let the insurance or whoever else say you have to see this person because whatever. You still get to choose, because this is somebody who you're literally being vulnerable with, and literally sharing all of your life if you choose to.
Yeah.
But these questions are for you to empower yourself, because again, it does the therapist fit your needs, not if you fit theirs.
Yes. And my go-to like slogan in my initial consultation appointments, and I'll tell clients this, like new clients this, is I always tell them my job is to counsel myself out of a job. That's literally what I tell my clients. My goal here is to counsel myself out of a job, you know, because if I'm over here and I'm like, you know, I see that there's no change, or it's not helping, like how maybe my approach to therapy with you, working with you, is not helping. Why am I continuing to be your therapist? Right. So that I would need to take some serious, like, you know, evaluation and assessment on my end to make sure I'm like, okay, maybe my approach and how I'm working with this is not working for this client. It's actually unethical for us to keep seeing clients if there's like, if they're not doing well, if there's no change, if there's nothing like that, like it's really unethical for us to just continue, like if there's no change or anything, right? Like, but if there is constant, like if it is beneficial, like the moment therapy becomes unbeneficial for clients and we still see them, that's unethical for us to do. Okay. So this is also on the client, where if you feel like, okay, you know what, it's been like 6 months now and I just don't feel like it's anything is, I don't feel like the needle's moving, right? Then you can let that therapist know, like, hey, I think I'm gonna, like, it's okay. It's okay. Like, don't worry about getting your therapist feelings hurt. They'll be fine. But you make sure you are taking care of yourself and making sure that you're finding the right therapist for you.
So therapist shop is essentially what we're
Mm-hmm.
saying. Therapist shop for your needs.
Mm-hmm. All right. All right. We're coming up to the end of our conversation today. But what to look for in a therapist? I think Scarlett mentioned this a bit earlier. Making sure that they have their credentials in line. You know, Scarlett talked about this, you know, a while, like as far as like the extensive amount of work that a therapist, you know, have to do to not only like getting that master's degree, but also like the clinical work afterwards and getting like the 3,000 hours of licensure. Like, so there's extensive training that goes into that. So make sure, you know, that just because someone says that they're a counselor, doesn't mean you have to take their word for it. Do your research and make sure that you are that they are licensed. You can look them up. Matter of fact, you can look them up on the Department of Health website to see their credentials or their license. You can also like look for, like, if you want a therapist that specializes in OCD, you can specifically look for that and make sure that they're trained in that. What training have you had in working with people with OCD? Or maybe even like looking for a therapist, depending on what insurances that they take. So whatever it is, make sure that you know what you want to look for in a therapist, because what Scarlett is looking for in a therapist might be different from what I look for in a therapist, you know? So everyone is different. So like Scarlett said earlier, therapist shop.
Mm-hmm. So just to add on more, so like for example, when you're looking for a therapist, do you want somebody who's new to the field, who's older in the field? Do you want somebody young? Do you want somebody older? Do you want somebody who has little to no life experience, or do you want somebody who has a lot of life experiences? So those are some of the things that we want to encourage you when we talk about what to look for in a therapist.
Any questions or comments? All right. So of course, like as a client, as a mental health, you know, client, consumer, you have rights. I think a lot of people don't realize this, but you do have rights. Like, you should be treated with respect and dignity, and your therapy should be confidential. Like, it is, not should be, it is. But and you know, so like for college students, like, for you to be able to understand like your rights is really important, especially if, like, you know, this is your first time going to therapy. And I know, like Dr. King had mentioned earlier, just a bit of concern with our young people, like kind of like going into therapy for the first time and not getting that, you know, culturally sensitive therapist to be able to like help them out, because then this is their first time going in, and then they get turned away and not get the help, and now they're shut off about therapy for the entire time because they didn't have such a good experience at first, right? So really important to understand that you do have rights. This is the WAC for Washington, in concern regarding like your rights as a mental health consumer. Scarlett, did you want to add anything to this?
Yeah, the thing, just know that even if you're being mistreated by the therapist, you have the right to make a formal complaint to the Washington Department of Health.
Mm-hmm.
Like what you should receive and every initial session is in particularly in the state of Washington, when you fill out the paperwork, you should get what is called a therapist disclosure.
Mm-hmm.
It should list your rights, it should list what the rights are, the WAC, and then it'll have the therapist's full name and the therapist's license, and it also will give you the contact information of where you can make that formal complaint. So if you don't
Yes.
get that, you need to get it. It's called a
Mm-hmm.
therapist disclosure. That should
Mm-hmm.
always be given out, and they have to, you have to sign it that you received it, and the therapist has to sign that you got it as well.
Mm-hmm. And it'll be along with all the paperwork that you need, like the consent or the release of information if
Mm-hmm.
needed. So all those paperwork ought to be there in that first session. Okay. And then HIPAA, of course, like, under HIPAA, you have the right to access your health records. No, you have the right to know who has seen your records. You have the right to be able to like correct any errors that might have in your records. And this applies to students receiving therapy. So it's really important to be able to like stay informed about your privacy and the rights that you do have. Scarlett, did you want to add anything to that last one?
So yeah, so with HIPAA really quickly, so for example, if you're in therapy and someone calls like a family member or a friend, they'd be like, "Hey, did Sala come to therapy today?" I would not even be able to acknowledge that Sala is a client of mine.
Mm-hmm.
And so even if we see you out in public, we have to maintain HIPAA privacy.
Yeah.
So we will not have long conversations because a lot of our communities know what we do. We never want to give off or insinuate that we're talking about someone in that who may be seeing therapy with us. And so, we have a lot of boundaries around that. So again, HIPAA is there to help again to keep you protected. Go ahead,
Mm-hmm.
Lena.
Hi, I just wanted to hop on and say thank you. Kalangan. I do have to go because I have something at 1:40. But Kalangan Lab, I'm really excited to join the next one. Thank you so
Hey.
much.
For
Thank you,
sure.
Lena.
Thank you, Lena. So, Solid, do you want me to close out? Do you want me to close out?
Oh, yeah. Well, this was it. If anybody have any other questions or comments or anything like that, definitely.
For sure. Go ahead, Eric.
Yes, hi. Hi everyone. My name is Eric Greer. I'm the Vice President of Student Affairs here. I just want to say that this was phenomenal. I just want to thank you all for putting this on. I knew this event was coming up, so just really thank you all because I just think this discussion is so important. Um, Actually, my mom is in town, so I'm gonna say this before she gets back in the house. But what you shared today was real, especially around cultural fit, when you're talking about the intentionality of looking for a therapist, with specific areas of focus that are important to you at that time, because it changes, It can be professional, it could be personal, it could be dealing with loneliness if you're moving to a new place. So that's important. And then just, what stood out to me was just right to choose. I think that's so important for all of us to hear,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Interviewing therapists for appropriate fit, because this is a relationship.
Yes.
I'll be a little vulnerable. When I first moved here, I went through a few therapists in Washington State, and they were not appropriate fits. And, similar thing, they were sharing certain things where it was based off of their understanding about culture, about my culture, about my racial background.
Yeah.
And it was like, this is not really fitting.
Yeah.
And I think what happens is over time, it turns us off and it puts us in a place where we feel like no one understands us, because people see people of color as monolithic, that we're all the same, and we're not. And not even, there's articles that talk about that. Not even Black Americans we're not a monolithic group. Depending on where you're raised different. I was raised around Koreans, so my understanding is different. There are times I talk to my friends and my mother behaves a certain way. I grew up the same way. I never heard praise. I never heard my mom say she was proud of me until I graduated from high school. It didn't mean that I wasn't loved. It's just
Yeah.
if I keep staying on you, that's me showing my love. If
Yeah.
I'm critical
Like
about certain things,
actionable. Yeah.
absolutely, that's me showing my love.
Yep.
You know, so it's just different. And if you weren't raised around particular cultures or around that group, you will think, oh, you didn't grow up with love.
Yes.
No,
Yeah.
love is different.
Yeah.
It's expressed
It's conveyed differently. Yes.
conveyed differently. So thank you for sharing that. Even me, this is great information for me to hear, to be reminded of. This is a great presentation for for our students to hear, our institutional community here. I want to continue to come back to more, and I just appreciate you all for all you're doing. Shout out and thank you to Dr. King.
Thank you so
Yay.
much.
Awesome. Thank you
Appreciate
so
it.
much,
Thank you
Eric.
so much, Eric.
You keep coming. I'm telling you, you'll see Scarlett and I just get realer and realer with like the coming
Bring the real, bring the real.
because we really, and a lot of people are surprised because they're like, but you guys are therapists. Why are you like talking like, well, we're normal people too, we're just regular people. Like we're just, So yeah, you'll see us just be really real with our experiences because we want to remove sort of that barrier or veil between professional and like, our community in order for us to be able to connect and reach our community. Like we're with our community. So we're going to be real. We're going to share our experiences and we're going to be very vulnerable. Yes.
Absolutely.
And what you said earlier, is it pronounced, I'm sorry, is it pronounced Sala?
Yes. Yes.
Sala, what I heard you say earlier when I came in, representation matters. Agency, which is, I'm using those synonymously, agency and representation, it matters.
Absolutely.
So, it was hard. I'm still looking for somebody to look like me that can be a therapist. Because if you don't look like me, if you didn't have my experience where you grew up in a community similar to mine, you're not gonna understand.
Yeah.
So yeah, I totally hear you, and yeah, like I said, thank you. And there's something I want to say. I don't know how this is gonna sound, and I'll preface it if necessary. I once heard one of my advisors say when I was in community college, only the wounded can heal. So only when you have been through some things can you truly help others. So yeah, that's how I feel, and that's what I believe. So thank you.
So here's what I would add to that, Eric. When you say only the wounded to heal, you have to know you're wounded though.
Yeah.
You have to know you're wounded because if you're not seeing it, you don't, because sometimes people just don't see it. But so you have to know you're wounded in order for you to know that you need healing.
That is so true. Okay. I have to go to my next meeting, but I thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. So I know we're close on
Thank you,
time.
Eric. Great job.
Yeah.
I echo everything that you said. These presenters are wonderful and this team is great. So thank you for bringing this to us. And I also have to leave. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
It is a great presentation and it's a blessing to our community abroad.
Awesome. Thank you, Auntie Sylvia. If you go home today and you have any more questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, especially to the students who are watching this. Again, we want to thank Green River and Dr. King for reaching out to us, for allowing us to do these types of community conversations. That's why we love them, and that's why we call them community conversations for sure. So we are truly thankful. Please come to our future community conversations. Please check the flyer for the dates and times, and we can't wait to see you to the next one. So Leslie, I will officially turn it to you to officially close this out.
Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in for today's session, What is Therapy? Special thanks to you both, Sala and Scarlett, for your time in demystifying the misconceptions about therapy. As you mentioned before, this is episode 1 of our 8-part series, so join us next Thursday, October 10, from 12 p.m. to 1:30. We'll be discussing navigating culture stigmas in mental health, hosted by GRC's Pono program. For those of you tuning in at the Student Union, we have a post-event survey that you can share with us your thoughts and what you'd like to hear to cover in the future. Thank you again for our sponsors and collaborators on this project. This is Leslie Finn, and we'll catch you next week on Inner Wellness. Thank you so much, everybody. Take care.
Storms never last, do they, baby? Bad times are perfect wallflower.